Hey guys, I wanted to come on here and this is probably ain't going to be as long as my other ones, but I wanted to come on and give you my thoughts on just a review, give you my thoughts on last night's Dark Side of the Ring on the Dynamite Kid, and to say that this was probably the darkest one they've done would be an understatement. I mean, to say it was darker than the Jake the Snake, In the Shadow of Grizzly Smith, Rockin' Robin, Sam Houston one last week, that is saying something, because at least that one had kind of a happy ending, kind of a good ending to it. This did not. This had this did not have a good ending, because basically, even though the bright spot was that his oldest daughter took time to go see him while he was in England, while he was confined to a wheelchair. That's the only bright spot I think you get out of this, because most of it was mainly like his downward spiral to what he became. I mean, the fact that at first when he was competing, I mean, here's the thing: when he was competing in Calgary, at Stampede Wrestling, it's like everything was fine, and then when he went to Japan, everything was good. But then when he got noticed by the WWE, that's when things kind of changed, and apparently they didn't change for the better. But the thing they focused on a lot was, the main thing actually was the fact that he always would brutalize his body. He would brutalize it because he wanted to make it look real. Because of the fact that he had that short stature to him, he wanted to make the bumps and things that he went through look more real, more legit than anybody could imagine. And obviously he paid a toll for it. And he's just one of those cases to where it's like, you try to bring up because one thing I noticed during the special was, they tried to ask certain questions, bring up certain things, and some of the people they talked to, like the former Scott McGee, who they got, his wife, his widow, if you will, or his ex-wife, they didn't want to talk about certain things. They would bring up and be like, why do you want me to talk about that? Like the Scott McGee guy, he's like, why do you want me to talk about that? You want to see me cry? And then his ex-wife was like, well, I don't want to talk about the whole Jacques Rougeau thing anymore, because it's played. There was some things that they wanted to talk about, because that's one of the things that's made Dark Side of the Ring very popular with fans, is the fact that they would get information from these talents, or not talents, but from the people that knew these talents personally, or even behind the scenes personally, and outside of the ring. And it's like, usually they'd get some kind of answer, and they got some answers here, but not, maybe very reluctantly, in a way, because it's like, like I said, the wife didn't want to talk about the Jacques Rougeau thing. They didn't, Scott McGee didn't want to talk about the passing, or finding out about the passing of Dynamite, of Tom Billington. It's like, to me, Solomonster said in his review of In the Shadow of Grizzly Smith that they ran the gambit. They did it again here, because the downward spiral that Dynamite went through, it's one thing to hear stories of, it's one thing to hear stories of basically having backstage heat, backstage issues, and the ramifications of it outside of the ring, and everything affecting you and making you do things you shouldn't do. But it's another to allow that to manifest itself and expand itself into into your house, into your own family. And there was several moments, throughout this episode where it's like, what, you didn't know what was going on with him. I mean, the wife You know, she sometimes obviously would chalk it up to, you know, him drinking and stuff and smoking, and then, you know, he would take his anger out on her sometimes in a way that, you know, at first didn't seem that bad. You know, it's like, okay, he's a little hungover, he's high, he's not thinking straight, so I'll just, you know, stay out of his way. To the point that it got so bad. It got so bad that he pulled a gun on her while she was pregnant with the third child, with the youngest child. And not only that, but the fact that he drug her across the ground before he did that. He drug her across the ground while she was pregnant with the youngest child. This, to me, when I saw this, I was like, it's like, I couldn't even believe what I was seeing. I couldn't even believe what I was seeing, and it's just hard to believe that a guy that had so much talent, a guy that had so much potential in the business, you know, to be a future champion, you know, not just tag champ, but a future world champ, could throw it all away the way he did. I mean, the fact that he would even take his anger out on for the littlest of mistakes sometimes. You know, because he's an old school guy. He was an old school wrestler. He has an old school mentality of it. And he took his anger for the way he felt that, you know, Jacques Rougeau and Raymond Rougeau, the Rougeau brothers, the fabulous Rougeau brothers, what he felt were making a mockery. And one day, what's he decide to do? He decides to basically slap Jacques across the back, punch him in the face, knock out a few teeth or something like that. And Jacques, you could tell he was pissed when they talked to him here. He even got angry. He even got emotionally angry when he brought up how he got revenge, how he got back at Dynamite for what he did. But this guy's career is just, it's just one that it baffles you when you see what he went through. I mean, the fact that he had a back injury, he suffered a back injury that aggravated, you know, basically, what's the word I'm looking for? Aggravated his back even more, to the point that when he had surgery, they said, look, you're not going to be able to get back in the ring. You're done. But yet, what, a couple of months later, several weeks later, he was back in the ring. The only other time he got back in the ring after the surgery, when he was wheelchair bound, is they had to drop the belts to the Hart Foundation because, you know, McMahon couldn't keep the belt on him because he was injured. But then all of a sudden, here he comes, like a couple weeks later, a couple months later, he's back in the ring taking bumps. And that's where the whole abuse with the steroids and, you know, and stuff came into play. And it's like, you know, what's with this guy? You know, what's with this guy? Why doesn't this guy heed the warning, heed the attention, heed the warning and the advice of the doctors and his own family and friends, like, hey, maybe it's time to step away? But he didn't. He just kept going, and he just kept going, and he just kept going. It's really sad when you think about it. I mean, tremendously sad. I mean, the fact that he wanted to keep going and going, it's hard to believe. And then you look at the 1988 Survivor Series, and the fact that that was the last time we would see him in the WWE ring because, you know, he had to step away. He had to step away because of injuries, but he didn't step away from wrestling completely. He still competed. He went back to Japan and tried to end his career on his own merit. You know, and he had his retirement match there, like around what, 90-something, 91, 92? I can't remember. And that was fine. That's a good way for him to go out. You know, have one last hurrah in the ring. But then, you know, that's when things started to spiral even more out of control. Like I said, I talked about how he put a gun to his wife's head and she had to call the police because she was getting to the point that even when she was pregnant, she was thinking, I can't take this anymore. I can't live with this anymore. She was thinking suicidal thoughts. So she basically gave him an ultimatum. She gave him an ultimatum. Well, basically, it was not just an ultimatum. It was basically like, look, I can't stand this anymore. You got to go. You got to book it. You got to leave. So she got him a one-way ticket back to England. And this is where the whole thing with the gun situation came into play. All because she didn't want to deal with this anymore. And she was just saying, look, this is it. We're done. I can't live with this. She's like, I still love you, and I love you enough to do this for you and our own protection and for our kids' protections. It's just hard to just look at this and be like, what was wrong with this guy? What was wrong with this guy? You know? And then he tries to make a comeback to the ring around 97 and as part of Michinoku Pro Wrestling in Japan. And that's where his comeback match did not look good. He did not look good in that. It's like, if that's not a sign of the fact that, hey, maybe you need to retire, maybe you need to hang it up, I don't know what is. And then that immediately after that, that's when the doctors told him, hey, your legs are shot. Your legs are shot. We can't do anything about these. We can't do anything about these because you're gonna be. They couldn't operate on them. So he ended up being confined to a wheelchair because they were so shot. I mean, going back to his back situation, according to his wife, he has discs tangled up in some of his vertebrae, and you know, his like muscle tissue, stuff like that. It's like this guy. It basically took essentially him competing in that comeback match, and then what happened afterwards to make him wake up and realize, you know, hey, maybe it is time for me to retire or hang it up, whether I like it or not, because it took the doctors, basically it was the doctors that literally had to, like I say, tell him he shot up his legs, because he collapsed on his legs apparently. And it's basically his legs gave out, and the doctor's like, we can't do anything anymore. Your legs are shot to blank. Your legs are shot to blank. And they couldn't do anything. And he was confined to a wheelchair for the rest of his life. And it was just sad. Just sad that it took him collapsing under his own weight. His knees buckling, his legs buckling, for him to get the picture of, you know, it's time to step away. It's time to step away. It's time to move on. You know, you can't do this anymore. He was forced, against his own will, he was forced to have to step away. And all I can say is, he wouldn't be, I would say this, and Lord forgive me for saying this, I think Tom Billington would still be around today had he listened the first time. Had he listened back when he had that injury to his back and they showed him how messed up it was. I think if he would have listened then, he'd be around right now. He would be around right now. But that never happened. He just didn't listen. And it just was a downward spiral, and unfortunately, he passed away because of it. The only bright side, like I said earlier, is he got to see his daughter, his oldest daughter. And she said she broke down and cried because she hadn't seen him in 15 years. And now she sees him, you know, like that. But at least that's the only bright spot out of this whole situation. It's the only bright spot. And again, it was a sad ending. You know, like I said, he had his stroke, and that contributed to basically his life being shortened even more than what it was. And what's crazy is his wife still loves him. She still loved him. That despite, you know, because here's what she said, she still loved him. You don't have 3 kids and not still love each other, or not still love somebody. And in a way, she says she still loves him, but she just didn't love what was going on. She didn't love what he was doing or what he was becoming. That was the thing. And I don't think anybody could blame her for saying that, because, you know, it's like, you know, you can't, like I said, you can't blame her for saying that, because it's kind of true. It's like that old saying that if you love something so much, you'll let it go, especially if it's for their own good, for their own good or your own good. If you love someone so much, you'll let it go. And that's what she had to do. She had to let him go, for her own safety, his own safety, and the kid's own safety. Now the youngest, when they talked to her and she found out the truth, she was mad. She was mad at her mom, she was mad at her dad. And I'm thinking, because before they went to one of the last commercials, she said she had basically gone into a time of her life that you're thinking, oh wait, did she end up doing stuff or anything? They didn't touch upon that. I think what it was a time of distrust and everything. Like, she still loved her parents, but it was more of a distrust kind of factor. But that trust was what obviously earned back on the behalf of the mother. But yeah, it's just, yeah, the youngest was not happy. The youngest was not happy with, you know, with her mom for not telling her the full truth, because the reason the mother finally told her daughters the full truth was she did that interview during the CNN special Death Grip on Pro Wrestling that came out after the Chris Benoit situation. And it's like, now she's telling them the truth because she was protecting them, but now that she was going to tell the world the truth, she knew she had no choice but to tell her kids the truth, and that's what she did. You know, that's what she did. And you know, it's I can understand where she's coming from, because if your parents hide something like this from you, like, how can you truly trust them to tell you how can you truly trust them, you know, for a time, if ever again, you know, with telling you what's true and what's not. But yeah, overall, you know, besides that, like I said, the silver lining is, you know, like I said, the silver lining, the one bright spot is the daughter got to see the oldest daughter got to see her dad. And the other bright spot, the silver lining, is at least the mother now understands what Dynamite, Tom Billington, meant by, you know, leaving what he does behind for his kids to admire and appreciate. You know, making their life good for them. Now she understands it. But yeah, overall, this was probably one of the darker episodes they've done. Even darker in a sense than, you know, like I said, last week's episode, In the Shadow of Grizzly Smith. And to be honest, I didn't even know, I'll tell you the truth, straight up, I didn't even know about Dynamite Kid until I saw Davey Boy Smith as the British Bulldog, you know, back in the early 90s. And they would refer to him as a former tag champ, and I'm thinking, who did he tag with? And at times they would talk about Dynamite, and I'm thinking, who's Dynamite Kid? And there were several times that, you know, my parents would let me rent a wrestling tape, and I saw WrestleMania 2, I think, and I watched that, and then that's when I first saw Dynamite, and I'm like, oh, okay, now I understand what they meant when they would say Davey, the former tag champ, and, you know, his partner was Dynamite. Now I get it. Now I see it. But yeah, that was the first time I'd heard about Dynamite. And then, of course, thanks to the network and the internet and everything, I've pretty much appreciated what like, in the ring, if you ignore everything he's done outside, you know, outside of the ring and all that, but if you just focus on what he did in the ring, he was a great wrestler. He was a great competitor. And again, I could see the potential he had to be something more than just a regular tag team wrestler or regular junior heavyweight, cruiserweight, as it's known today. You know, in wrestling, I saw the potential. I saw that potential, you know, that he had, and that he could have utilized had he not screwed up. Had he had he listened to the doctors when he did, he'd still be around today. And heck, had he listened to the doctors when he should have, maybe he'd still been competing even into the 90s. Imagine what kind of an asset he would have been during WCW's Cruiserweight era, you know, had he listened to people. Imagine what he could have been like had he remained healthy enough to maybe still be competing in the Attitude Era. I'm just saying, the potential was there. The potential was there. And unfortunately, because he didn't listen to the doctors, he squandered it. And that's a shame. That is a shame. But yeah, this was one of the more darker episodes they've done. Like I said, even darker than last week's. Now, as far as the first half of the season goes, I have to say it was good. I have to say they did a great job. The only dud I think that they had, or not dud, but kind of like the more, iffy one that they did was on the Ultimate Warrior, because they did that simultaneously the same week A&E did theirs. And like I said during that review, if you compile both of them together, you kind of get the full index of what was being told, if you know what I mean. But overall, the first half, I have to give them credit. They did good. The Brian Pillman one was good. Collision Korea was good. Nick Gage was good. And that's rare to do a Dark Side of the Ring on someone that's currently wrestling right now, and especially as we speak, is involved in two separate rivalries, feuds, if you will. One with John Moxley and one with Matt one with John Moxley and one with Matt Condora, Zack Ryder, if you will. So, yeah, it's unique to see, them talking about someone that's currently competing, trying to do better for himself. Like I said, Warrior was a kind of a, in between. Jake was, Collision in Korea was good. Got to get more insight into what the heck was going on there. Jake, in the Shadow Grizzly Smith, the Jake the Snake, Rockin' Robin, Sam Houston one, yeah, that was dark. There's no doubt about it. But this one, like I said, the Dynamite Kid one, I think outdid it, just barely, but it outdid it in the darkness factor. Overall, the first half of Dark Side of the Ring I thought was alright, and I can't wait to see how they top this in September with the second half. And the second half is supposed to be about FMW, XPW, Chris Kanyon, Luna Vachon, the steroids trial. It's going to be interesting to see exactly which one they end the season off with, as a two-parter. Is it going to be XPW, FMW, Luna, Chris Kanyon, the steroids trial? We'll see. But I look forward to it, and I thoroughly enjoyed this first half. And I do recommend anybody that has not seen Dark Side of the Ring, check it out. I think you might be intrigued about what you see. But until next time, guys, thank you all for watching, and I'll talk to y'all later.